Hey, it's Derek Depker here, Bestseller Secrets with Honoree Corridor, who is a prolific author in her own right, over 50 books, and a master at coaching authors and writers through the publishing and book marketing process. It's an honor to have you here, Honoree.
So delighted to finally meet you and be with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so there's so much that you have that you can share with the audience here today when it comes to book writing, book marketing. But before we get into that, can you share a little bit about your background and how you got into doing what you're doing right now?
Sure. Yes. The brief story is I was a business coach who became a speaker, who became an author because I met Mark Victor Hansen, and he said, "Oh, that's cute. You're a coach and a speaker. Everyone's a coach and a speaker. You must write a book." So I thought, well, I've never been to college. I've never taken a writing class. I'm not a writer. What could possibly go wrong? So I wrote my first book and fell in love with writing books. And then eventually my business coaching clients would say, "I read your book. It's helping your business. Should I write a book?" And I would say, well, yes, everyone should write a book. It's the best thing you could possibly do for all of the reasons that everyone listening or watching already knows. And so I kind of transitioned my practice and my focus to helping professionals and entrepreneurs become authors and to make money from their books.
Well, that's a great point. Make money from the books. There's a lot of people who go, "Oh, you can't make money from a book." There's people who know that you can leverage a book for greater authority, but they're like, "Well, I got a book. My life didn't change. And, I thought I'd just publish a book and opportunities would just fall into my lap, and it hasn't happened." So what would you say to someone who's like, "I like making money from a book. How do I get going with that?"
Yeah, so let's talk about the two different things when it comes to marketing and books. There is marketing your book, which is I sell you a book, you give me $15 or $20. Then there is marketing with your book, and that's different. That is, I'm going to give you my book or give you access to my book or 2 chapters of my book, and you are ultimately going to engage me in some way. We all know that as the funnel, right? So you're going to come into my funnel through the book, and then there could be the workbook, the course, the coaching, the consulting, all of the things. So marketing with your book is where a lot of people are missing opportunities to make the lion's share of their money. And when they start with the false belief that you can't make money from a book, well, guess what, right? You're just creating the future.
Yeah, great point that if a person doesn't believe it's possible, they're not even going to look to see all the opportunities that are sitting right there in front of them. They're not going to see all the counterexamples of authors who have successfully made money with the book. And I also really appreciate that distinction of marketing your book and then marketing with your book. And so is there a one that you give precedence to? You do both? How do you find that balance or decide which kind of path to go down or to integrate both of them?
Well, that's a great question. So the answer is yes. There is one place that I focus, and that is based upon the person that I'm working with and what their outcome is. So for example, I just had a conversation with one of my mastermind members, and she is a ghostwriter, and she's writing 2 books. One is for the person who wants to become an author and doesn't want to write a word. How do you find a good ghostwriter? That's a marketing piece, right? That is a book that she's going to give away. She's not looking to sell that book to people because that's not the purpose of the book. The purpose of the book is to generate business, the marketing with the book. But she's also going to write as a 40-time author, as a 20-year editor in traditional publishing, now as a for-hire ghostwriter in the indie space. She knows a lot. She knows a lot about editing and ghostwriting, and she wants to help people to become ghostwriters. So she's writing a book for the budding ghostwriter. She will want to sell that book, and then she will want to market with that book to get people into whatever comes after, the course, the coaching, that sort of thing. So it really isn't the one size fits all. Like, you want to sell your book and you want to sell with your book. It really depends on what are your goals, what are your outcomes, and then the strategy and the plan, we back into that based on what it is that you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's thinking with the end in mind, which is some of the things that a mistake I see some authors make is they got the book and then they're like, now what? Versus, wait, what's the purpose of this? What's the outcome I want to achieve? Okay, now let's work backwards and figure out the book that aligns to that goal.
Correct.
That's going to serve the end result. So Is that really one of the things, I mean, for me, I say, let's say someone goes, well, I already got a book out now. I'm not sure it's the right book for me. Would you say write a new book, try to change the original book? Depends. How do you approach that?
Yeah, it depends. So let's start with the end in mind and let's ask some questions. So let's start with the 3 questions I always start with. What do I want the reader to do as a result of reading my book? What do I want the reader to not do as a result of reading my book? And what do I want the right reader to do? Not that there's a wrong reader, but the right reader will do something. And I'll give a quick example. In my book, You Must Write a Book, I want everyone to write a book because I think being an author is awesome. I want everyone to not write a crappy book. So please don't write your book and publish it in a weekend, design your own cover, not get it edited, etc. There are a laundry list of things that make your book scream self-published, which if you want to make money, you want it to scream professional all day long, right? From front to back. And then what do you want the right reader to do? I want the right reader to say, Honoree, I don't know how to do this. You have the knowledge. I have the American Express card. Let's make book magic together. When you answer those questions, before you put pen to paper, you exponentially increase your chances of success. If you already have a book, look at the book through that lens. Did I answer those questions effectively with the book that I have now? Or would some of the content fit in a rewritten version of the book? So let's call that the second edition. Who cares, right? You don't sell the first edition anymore. No one knows. It just has to be 10% different in order to call it the second edition. And you answer those questions. What do I want the reader to do? What do I want the reader to not do? And what do I want the right reader to do? When you start with those questions, you save yourself a lot of pain and suffering. And also the book can then make money for you on the back end.
That's so good because you have this criteria now. It's not this kind of ambiguous, what do I want to write about? How do I even think about it? Do I throw everything in the kitchen sink in there? And that's also a challenge. Some people are like, I don't know what I want to write about. Other people are like, they dump and dump and dump. And then it's like,
Sure.
what do I not include? Because there's not that clarity of, who's the reader and what I want them to do, not do, and the right reader, what's the action that you're leading them to. So I really love those questions. And I want to get into optimizing the book, marketing a book here in a moment. This came up for me. I'm with you. I think everyone can write a book, would benefit from writing a book. It's something I can tell you, like my mom's not a writer. I'm like, I know, growing up, I'm like, here's the stories my mom could write that would inspire people. Like I can think of just about anyone who could have a book. Let's say someone goes, and this isn't quite, obviously the people watching this are authors and many of them have a book, but for some reason I just get this intuition that there might be some people that are still in the early stages. Maybe they're working on it. Maybe they got a little bit of that imposter syndrome going, like, do I really have a book? Do I really have a message? Who's going to want to hear from me? I don't know. There's so many other books written already. So you have any tips or advice for someone who might be still going through that?
Sure. Everyone at one point or another says, why would I write a book? There are 20,000 books that are on this topic of making money or creating income streams or being successful, right? Motivational books, inspirational books are a dime a dozen. Well, that tells me there's a market. And no one ever reads one book and then says, that's it, I'm done. I'm just going to read Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins over and over and over again. You might reread it, but you're going to read all of the other books. Said another way, a hungry fish is a hungry fish. Someone who's hungry for that knowledge is going to want, what's the next book to read? Oh, I'm going to read The Miracle Morning. Then I'm going to read The 4-Hour Work Week. Then I'm going to read The 4-Hour Body. And then I'm going to read Think and Grow Rich, et cetera, et cetera. So if someone has written a book, or many someones have written a book on your topic, that's a great sign there's a market for what you're wanting to talk about. Now, on the flip side, you think, well, then there are all these books. Why would someone want to read my book? Well, that's because you have experience and education and knowledge and all sorts of things that a reader can only hear from you. Not everybody likes Tony Robbins. I like him. But not everybody likes that style of person. Not everybody likes the 5-second rule of Mel Robbins, right? So you have to put your book in the marketplace because somebody is needing your message in order to be inspired to do whatever that thing is you want the reader to do.
Beautiful. And it's one of those things where, I mean, there's two concepts. One is people who are reading books want to read more books. Readers of books read more books.
That's right. That's right.
They just
That's
keep
right.
consuming. And so
Yes.
I remember there's a marketing training I was on, and it's like, you know, if you're going to sell a Rolex, do you sell to the person who has none or the person who already has 5? And you'd sell to the person who has 5 because they're a proven buyer. They like to buy Rolex watches, right? So you look at the market, a lot of people consume it. And then the other way of looking at it is going, well, you know, like you said, Tony Robbins isn't going to be for everyone. Someone wants to hear it the way that you have to say it with your unique background and perspective.
Yes.
And that's something you can't replace. And I was just thinking earlier, as I teach like hooks and formulas, I'm like, I played in a rock band. So I could just come up with I could write something about what playing in an 80s hair metal band taught me about being a better writer or marketing, right? Like you combine just interesting, interesting little things that only you have with your unique experience.
Yes. Claudia Altucher called it in Become an Idea Machine, idea sex, where you take two things that are seemingly unrelated and bring them together to create this brand new idea.
Yeah. So that's something that everyone has their unique experiences. And even if it doesn't seem like it's a unique experience, well, the fact that it's not unique now means you can connect with a lot of people who share that experience, and you just put your own little perspective on it and twist.
Right.
So with that in mind, so someone goes, okay, I got a book done. It's not selling as well as I would like it to, which of course could be a lot of different things. So, or it's not making me the money I want. How do you approach this in terms of assessing it and giving some guidance?
Sure. So let's talk about what makes a book look professional, and then let's talk about things that they can do, reframe maybe how they're thinking about their book and selling their book. So I call them the 4 cornerstones. When I'm looking at a book, I'm looking for these professional points. The first one is the cover. Was the cover designed by a professional, and does it fit into the neighborhood? In other words, if you went into a bookstore, would your book fit in and stand out? Is it going to look great next to its neighborhood, right? Next to its neighbors? Is the interior designed? Does it look nice on the inside? Is it an easy read? Has it been edited and proofread? And do you have good copywriting? Did you have a copywriter write your book description or sales copy? Or did you just kind of say, everybody needs to read my book, and put that on the back cover and put that on your Amazon sales page? So those are your 4 cornerstones: your design, your editing, your proofreading, and your copywriting. Those are the things that I look at when I look at a book to see and to make sure that it is professional. Now, if those have been taken care of, if you professionally produced a book, you can go, shoo, okay, I'm good. If you haven't, you can again go back and redo those things. And it's not very expensive. All things considered, you're looking at all in $5,000 or $6,000 to have really amazing people produce your book, and a book that's going to sell and sell and sell and sell and sell. So you have to think about not the $6,000 that you're going to invest, but the return on the investment for your book. And for anyone who sells anything, you're going to make many, many multiples of that $6,000 over and over again, year in and year out. I'm in about 2,300% per year on You Must Write a Book, just on one book. I had to figure that out for someone. So absolutely worth the investment. Now, assuming that all of that's been taken care of, think about your book as not being an avocado. So an avocado, for anyone into fitness, right, you know that there's that 1 hour that an avocado is good, and then you have to throw it out. It's either not ripe, or it's ripe and you have to eat it, or you have to throw it out. Those are traditionally published books. You get 12 weeks to get your book out, market the heck out of it, sell it, and then it's gone, right? They pull it and they pulp it, or they reprint it and keep selling it. If you have a book and you've indie published it, self-published it, your book is not an avocado. It is a brand new book to anyone who hasn't heard of it. The first thing you have to think about is, I have to be marketing my book every single day. I need to do 1 to 7 things. And that's the advice Mark Victor Hansen gave me. He said, do 7 things every day to market your book. And that's one way I sold 11,000 copies of my first book while I was waiting for it at the printers in 2004. So this is before Kindle. I just got on the phone and just started marketing my book. And I sold 11,000 copies before I ever saw the first actual physical copy, because I was doing those 7 things. So your book is never out of date or out of touch unless you have made it how to make money in the second quarter of 2020, right? So as long as it's perennial, you will always be able to sell it. So think of it as something that today is the day I'm going to find new buyers, new readers, new customers for my book. And then we can talk about the optimization pieces. And very basically, there are 3 parts to a book. There's the meat of the book, which is part number 2. And then there are the bookends of the book, the front matter and the back matter. The front matter is the beginning of the conversation that you have with the reader. And there has to be a way for someone to join your email list in the front matter. Please give something away. Give a cheat sheet, give 2 free chapters or a free book of yours in that in order to get their email address. We call it a lead magnet, right? Internet marketing. I'm sure your listeners are all very familiar with this. Give something away so they are getting on your email list. Even if you've given the book away, this is the way you start the conversation. You know all about this. Most people just put that section 2 in there, and then they don't know about section 1, which is the shy yes. Alex Mandossian a million years ago taught me about the shy yes. You open the book and say, hey, I'd like you to join my email list and I'll give you something in exchange for that. This is the, hi, I'd like to take you for coffee. You're cute, okay? This isn't let's get married. Let's get married is more at the end of the book in the back matter, where if someone has read all the way through your book, they like you. They want to know in your terms how to give you more of their money. In their terms, how to engage with you at a higher and deeper level. So in the back of the book, you can say, I have this course, I do this coaching, I do this speaking. Here's more about me. So the front matter and the back matter are probably missing in your books. Go and put some front matter and back matter in your books. Make sure your book is professionally published. And just by virtue of those few things, your book will start to sell automatically. And then there are lots of other things you can do, and we can talk about those too.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into some of the things about getting the word out about the book. First, I want to emphasize a few things that you brought up that's really important. One is getting that lead magnet in there. To me, all roads lead back to your email list, which is your platform that you own, because you're probably not just going to want to sell one book. You're probably going to have courses, coaching, multiple books, whatever else it is. And that's the way to keep in touch with them, especially if you're selling books on Amazon and things like that. You're not going to get that email address unless they choose to come back to your platform. The other thing is then having the way that they can work with you further, go deeper with whatever else you offer. And it's one of those things that it's really like I could hear it 20 times and it's not until someone says it again or in a different way, kind of a reason why, we all have our unique message about like having a speaking page back of the book. I didn't even really think about that until a couple of years back. I'm like, oh yeah, I speak. Oh, but I don't mention that in my book. I don't have a page on that. And it was one of those kind of like no duh things, or you get it. And then it's like, oh, now it's obvious, but it's also easy to not see it if you're not thinking about and conscious of these things.
Sure. When you're writing a book, it's so complex and overwhelming. Your first book, your second book, your fifth book, so many little details. It's not until you have a moment to think, what are the other things I could be doing, that they start to occur to you.
Yep. So let's say a person, they got the book done, they got the front and back matter, their foundation is in place. They're like, how do I find readers? How do I find people who will get this book and not only get the book, but might be the ideal right reader to then want to work further with me? What are some of the top strategies? You mentioned 1 to 7 things a day. Someone's going, well, what do I do for those 1 to 7 things? What'd you say?
What are those 1 to 7 things? Well, the first thing is and I'm just going to rattle off a list and you can ask me to go deeper about any of them. Appear on podcasts. Have a podcast list. So I'm going to say on the front page of my website, you can get a free copy of You Must Write a Book. And in the bonuses, I include how I pitch podcasts. Dear podcast host, I'm awesome. Here's my book. Let me come and talk to your audience and solve this problem, right? Very simple, but it's part of the bonuses. So have bonuses in your book so that people are getting on your email list. But show up on podcasts. Go where your readers are going to be hanging out and solve their problem. That's the first thing. Add your book to your email signature and to your autoresponder. Hi, I have a book. Here's where you can find it. Here are all the links to it. Let's see. social media is a logical place for everyone to show up. So post a picture of what you're reading. I follow the 80-20 rule. So it's 80% about my life and what I'm reading and what I'm doing, and pictures of my chocolate lab because she's awesome, and my cats, and 20% about I have a course or a book or any of those things. So be talking about what you're doing, but in a way that is not so self-centered that people will turn you off. Also, add a lot of value with your email list and make it easy for people to share with other people, because if someone is writing a book or someone is trying to sell more real estate or build their business, they know other people who are as well, and you want your information to be easily shareable. Give away your book everywhere. People just think this is hilarious, but I was being very scrappy in the very beginning, and I would take my books and put them in bookstores. So I would put my books in the bookstore in the section where the book would be if the bookstore ordered it. And people would take my book to the front and they would try to buy it and they couldn't buy it. And the bookstore would call me and say, what should we do? And I'm like, well, give them the book, sell them the book. But also that means there are buyers for my book. Can I please put my book on your bookshelf? Would you like to order them? So those are just a few of the things. You have to think, I call it thinking like a ninja. Just think about where your readers would be going and be there.
Well, on that point, I'd love to dive deeper into a couple of these. Like, what if someone goes, well, I don't know where my readers are going. I don't know where they're at. So any tips for that?
Sure. So to me, that's a fundamental issue. That means they didn't start with who is their reader. Because if you know who your reader is, and I call it the avatar, if you have described your avatar with 25 or 50 or 100 qualities and characteristics, which is what I always recommend, is describe the person that you're writing the book for, so that when you come to a fork in the road and you think, do I put this in the book or do I leave this out? Like, well, what does my avatar need to know? So if you know who your avatar is, if you know who your ideal reader is, by virtue of that fact, you should be able to figure out where they are hanging out.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the things when someone is saying that and their book is already out, I'm like, wait, wasn't this the thing you figure out before you ever put a single word on the page? Like, but if someone's not trained in that, they're like, I'm just saying what I want to say and throwing it in a book and we'll see what happens. And great if you're kind of like figuring out the process and it's like a practice book or whatever. But if you're doing this strategically business-wise, it's like that is a first step thing of who's my audience, who are other authors that they read from, what are other similar books, all of that.
Yes. And also too, then make friends with the other authors in your category. And one of the things that I suggest that you do is write down the 10 other authors who have books like your book, read their books, join their lists, review their books, buy them, review them, share them with your audience. And this is a strategic thing because Amazon does this thing called people who bought this also bought this. It's an also bought thing. So if the people who you want to buy your book have already bought these other 10 books that are like your book, they're going to show up in that search. And Amazon is going to say, gosh, here are these 10 books that Derek has read, and Honoree just wrote this book that's like these other books. So they're going to send you an email and say, hey, Derek, you should read Honoree's book because it's like these 10 other books that you've read. That's free marketing. That's organic marketing. That is forever, because the more you sell, the more you sell. Yeah,
it's one of those things. It's one of those things where, you can put it as a strategy, and I forget about it because it seems so like, I think I did it naturally, so to speak. I don't know if I'd say naturally is the best term, but it's like, of course I'm going to check out who the other authors are. How do they write their descriptions? What are they emailing people? Yep. That'd give me inspiration. Like, I'm seeking it out, just like learning music. I'm not going to start composing music day one. I'm going to study other musicians. Right. How did the scales work? How do they play? Okay, what are the licks and the riffs that they play? And then I evolve it and go, okay, now I've taken all this knowledge that I've gotten from what other people have done. I can model it, and now I can create my own thing out of that foundation.
Right. And also those friends that you've made, because make no mistake, if you buy my book and review my book and share my book on social media, you've got my attention, right? And I represent any other author. So now we're friends, right? Now we're like social media friends. And when you come out with a book and you say, I've written a book like your book, I'm going to say, yeah, come on, send it over. Let me give it a look. I'll promote it for you, right? If I'm a nice author, and authors are usually nice people, right? If you give first, if you do the give, the jab, hook, Gary Vaynerchuk kind of thing, right? That actually really works. So try that. You've made a bunch of friends in advance of writing your book, and then you can say, will you endorse my book? Would you write the foreword? Would you just put it on social media? Would you give me a tweet or something, right? A lot of people are very amenable to those types of things, especially when you aren't just showing up and saying, I have a book, would you read it? No, but I've done all these other things that you've noticed. Would you do me a solid? Absolutely.
Yep, that's such a great point. Getting the word out. There's a couple things there. You're building these relationships ahead of time, from day one. They're not competitors nearly as much as they're collaborators or partners in this.
Yep.
And you're giving value. So it's a lot less weird or awkward, or however someone would describe it. I hear this sometimes from people like, oh, I don't want to pester them. I don't want to annoy them. I don't want to be all about me, which is nice when they go, if I say, hey, did you ask anyone to like connect with them, see if they'd share it with their audience or whatever? And they're like, well, I don't want to annoy them. And then I have to, again, remember what you're saying here, which is like the people who tend to do well are intuitively giving value, sharing things, promoting other people's stuff. So it only makes sense to be like, hey, I have no idea if your audience would be interested in this or not, but I wrote this book. Does this sound like something that you could describe it a little bit? Does that sound like something that would be a fit for them? Or would you like to take a look at it? Just very easy type of things. But this is coming on the back end of you've reviewed their book, you've shared it, they've seen you. Already you've engaged, you've responded to a few of their emails telling them what you love about them and, oh, I love your email today, it made a difference and all that sort of stuff. That if you've been doing that ahead of time, that it now by the time it comes to promoting and marketing your book, it becomes a lot easier because you built those relationships.
Yes, and you make a good point with the email list. We all send out emails. I always ask a question. How did you discover me? What are you working on? What book are you writing? And those sorts of things. And I read every email that comes back to me. I have lots of people that are my virtual pen pals now because they actually answer my questions. I'm like, what? Somebody actually read my email? That's really cool. And then we have this back and forth. Hey, can I ask you a question? Of course you can ask me a question. It's the people who are takers right out of the boat that fail. But you make a good point, which is that anyone who gives first is going to be given to in spades, and I'm happy to do it. I'm sure you're happy to do it.
Yep. Cool. So with respect for time, do you have a few more minutes? Or
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's keep going. Yeah.
So let's say then you mentioned a few different strategies, and a lot of this, the theme that's coming out of here that I'm really glad that we got is so much of this is a little bit of forethought, planning ahead, getting your foundation in place. It's the whole Abraham Lincoln, give me 6 hours, chop down a tree, spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe, right? So much of it's sharpening the axe, where by the time a person has an issue with marketing, a lot of times it's like, take a step back, reassess, and build some of these foundational pieces in place. You mentioned something that I am a big fan of, and I became a big fan, really inspired by Hal Elrod when I first heard him talk about podcasts a few years back, and then just recently interviewed him, and he's repeating like, get on podcast, or, that was like my number one thing was guest podcasting. So, why is it, and what have you noticed in terms of why guest podcasting and going on as a guest is so powerful for book marketing and just marketing yourself overall?
Because you're right here in someone's ear when they're listening to a podcast, whether they're watching it or they are, I'm an exerciser, so I consume an awful lot of content on 1.5 or 2x speed. Audiobooks and podcasts. And so you're in someone's head, your voice is in someone's head, and they get to know you. Do they like your voice? Do they like what you have to say? Do you have value? Are you adding value to them? Are you solving a problem? Are you helping to capitalize on an opportunity? Like, what is it? And there are so many podcasts, and people are looking for the content that they want more information about. I'm learning languages, so I'm all about the language learning podcast. So I'm consuming that en masse. and looking for all of those language hacks, right? Anyone who wants to build a business is going to go and listen to entrepreneurial podcasts. Anyone who wants to write a book is going to go and find all of the books on publishing and writing. How do you write? How do you publish? How do you market? All of those things. They're looking for the information that you're providing. And when they put in that keyword, your name comes up, your name comes up, your name comes up. That's good, right? And also, podcasts are one of the fastest growing mediums. And it's so funny when someone says, what's a podcast? I'm like, what? Where have you been? Please allow me to introduce you to a podcast. And all of a sudden they're hooked on it, right? So it's just another way for you to get into someone's life in their ear very, very quickly.
Yeah, and podcasts are great, especially as people get busier these days. They're exercising, they're driving to work, even as many people are home, depending on, right now, COVID-19, but you might be listening to this later. Like, people are listening a lot more often. And while you might think, well, I'm a writer, wouldn't people be reading? And of course, they'll probably be reading too. And, you do guest blogging and publications and stuff. At the same time, the more things go to audio, you also mentioned audiobooks. That's the reason to have an audiobook, which I've been talking about for years. Have an audiobook, get on podcasts, get into that audio market as more and more people are in there. And I also love podcasts. I was just talking about it today. I just thought, kind of like off the top of my head, like I have a supplement here and not going to pitch the supplement or anything. I have no connection with the company, but I just look at this and I go, I didn't think I wanted this or needed this until I was listening to the doctor talk on the podcast. And he wasn't there like, buy my thing. He was just talking about the science of it. And towards the end, before he's making a pitch, I'm like, how do I get this? I want to buy it. Like, I'm being sold on it in a very non-salesy environment of just someone talking about their expertise. And I'm like, I have an aha moment. This person really knows what they're talking about. I wonder how I can learn more about what they're doing. And I'm experiencing myself selling myself on, I want to buy what you have to offer before there's ever even any sort of pitch made.
Yes, and audio is so let's just stay on the audio bandwagon for just a second. When you do your book, do your ebook, do your paperback, do your hardcover, do your audiobook, because it's not how you consume content, it's how your client, your customer, your avatar, your reader consumes content. That is important. But audio is very easy to do the laundry, go to the gym, drive to work, go on a trip, and consume. So I have, I think, 97 years worth of audio that I haven't listened to yet. So I'm listening as often as I possibly can to all of the things that I want to listen to, because I can do it hands-free, which reading requires sitting and reading. And I have time set aside for that. And I have highlighters in every color. Of course, I'm a book nerd, so duh. But not everyone has that time or makes that time to sit and read. But they will find themselves with time when they are running errands or doing something where they can be hands-free and listening. And they do go through that process of just what you did, is like, who is this person and where have they been my whole life? And how do I engage with them? What is that website? What is their their Instagram handle? I got to connect. Happens all the time. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. I never made the connection until now about the power of audio for this particular, for one thing in particular. And that is, like, I love to read. I love to write. As I imagine many people here are writers. So you're like, I maybe some of them have a writing bias and a reading bias. And as much as I love that, one thing I know about marketing and sales and copywriting is this idea of consumption. What actually gets a person to consume the content? So if you have to stop what you're doing and sit down, that has greater friction for many people. They might do it, but they're much more likely to consume it and find the time to consume it if it's an audio. But here's the interesting thing I didn't think about. If I see an article, I skim. I glance at it. I kind of skim through it.
Yes.
I think, maybe do I already know this? As much as I study personal development, I'm like, well, there might be something new and I can get some distinction. I'm much more likely to skip past and skim through things, but not with audio. With audio, I'm going to go through the journey. I mean, you can put it on a faster speed. You could technically skip ahead, but I'm actually going to be with that person for the next 20, 30, 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm going to go that whole time.
Yes.
And the fact that you like psychologically take that journey with them and not just like, oh, I'm too busy, I want to skip ahead. You actually go with them. It gives time to really lay out your message, your stories, what you have to say, and things that I know for myself I probably would have skipped past or ignored or whatever. Because it's in the podcast, I kind of sit through it and then I'm like, oh, I'm glad I actually paid attention and listened to that, and I consume the whole thing. And that's something that I think is an advantage of audio over just, written content.
Yes, and that's also a disadvantage and something for people to think about when it comes to the content of their book. And this is a before you put pen to paper situation. There are some books, and I'm not going to say who it is, but I read the third book of a very well-known author, and the first two books were amazing. And the third book went on for days about one concept over and over and over. And my thought was, this is a traditionally published book that had a minimum number of pages due, and so the author just beat the subject to death. But I just kept thinking, any minute now there's going to be value. I'm listening at 1.7, 1.8, 2.0, 2.5, right? And I'm walking and I'm going, okay, come on, baby, you can right? just get to the point. The beautiful thing about indie publishing, one of the things I like about it the most, is that you get to control the content, and you don't have to have a maximum number of words. You can actually say what you need to say, take the time you need to say it, no more, no less, and get it done. But really consider your listener. You don't have to tell them that you told them, tell them, and tell them what you told them. You can get to the point, solve their problem, help them capitalize on an opportunity, and be done with it. And there doesn't have to be X number of words. It can be whatever it ends up being. So think about your reader and whether they want a longer form book or a shorter form book. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it matches with something I've seen as a trend over the last several years. I've seen a lot more people liking and looking at the reviews, liking shorter books, complaining about books that go on just like that. Like it's like this was 20 useful pages and 300 pages that they could have cut out. And people are having to try to endure that. And the thing is, it's a misconception to think that longer equals more value. And in the sense that, like, with people, it went to the information age. I've heard it put like this, like we entered into the information age. Now we're going into the perspective age, where people actually don't want we've actually overloaded ourselves with information. You can get anything you want on Google. It's too much information. Yes. Someone give me some perspective and tell me what I need when I need it precisely. And that is one of the values that you have with just as a writer, as an author in general, as a thought leader, as an expert, but also it's permission to say, not only can you make it short, sweet, and to the point, that might be something that there's times I'm like, I would pay you more to not waste my time.
Yes. And I actually have, with a ghostwriter, a become an author without writing a word project where we actually help people to become authors, and the books are 15,000 words. Mm-hmm. That's it. We do everything, and it's short. If you can solve my problem in 3 sentences, please do that. I'm in a hurry. Yep. Right? I don't need to hear it over and over again. That's just another way you can consider your reader, your customer, your client, your listener, right?
Yeah, great. So we can wrap it up now here in a moment. I want to see if there's any big like mistakes, pitfalls to watch out for when it comes to marketing your book. So many. Where can I start? Thinking that there's an expiration date on your book, not doing it consistently, not optimizing your book. I talked to a woman the other day who was working on her first book, and so we were doing a 3-way Zoom, right? So first person had 2 books, other person was working on her first book, this lady's working on her third book, and the woman who said, I give away a lot of my books, and the author was like, I'm not giving away my book, like they're gonna buy it. And I said, but what do you want the reader to do? I want them to hire me. It's like, well, do you want the $7 or do you want the $7,500? Right? Which do you want? So it's getting very focused on, but I have to sell this
because I work so hard on it, as opposed to what's the end result that you want, and staying in the end result, recognizing that there is no expiration date on your book. What are mistakes authors make about marketing? They quit too soon. I think that's if the book is done well, so I'm making the assumption the book is done well. If the book is done well, then it's not thinking, what am I going to do today? Like, it's the question, what am I going to do today to build my email list? What am I going to do today to sell my book or to market with my book? And is what I'm doing selling my book or marketing my book? Right? Or marketing with my book? Is everything, all roads are leading back to the email list, which leads back to the bank account, right? So water is taking the path of least resistance. So is what I'm doing making strides? Am I getting my book in front of new readers? How can I creatively get my book in front of new readers? And I think the biggest mistake is the one that predates all of that, which is, well, you can't make money from your books anyway. So starting with that presupposition, it's no wonder that there are books that are not done well and not optimized, because if the assumption is, well, I'm going to go to all this effort, there are faster and easier ways to make money than to work on a book, everybody, right? So if that's the presupposition, then of course you're not going to be successful. So presuppose that you're going to earn money from selling your book if that's an outcome you desire, and presuppose you're going to make money marketing with your book if that's what you desire. And then that, by virtue of that, you are turning on the reticular activating system, that part of your brain that notices something, and you'll notice that opportunity. And then I don't see people marketing with their book by repurposing the contents of their book, which is a whole other conversation that we could have. They're not thinking about, how can I turn this content into something else that's in a different form that I could charge more for or leverage for passive income.
So I'm really glad what you mentioned the word consistency, because I think you're getting to really core level things that are the most important to be conscious of. And that is, like, I was inspired. You mentioned Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul. What was it, was it over a year and a half? What was it that before it really took off?
Oh, yes. A while.
Yeah, it took, yes. Yeah. I mean, it took well over a year before they got that momentum. Hal Elrod was, we were talking, he made some, good sales. I think, over 10,000 that first year, but he didn't hit the million mark. And, it's like 7 years into it or so. Yeah. Right. So that's what I was inspired by Hal, is like, day in, day out, I'm going to do something to get the word out about this book. And he put it in such a great way. It's like, I fell short of my goal of 1 million books by like 98 something percent, that first year, but it's not, yes. It's not like about that 1 year. It's like you're saying, every day, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's not this little launch window, like you're saying, with some traditionally published books where you go, I got this, make or break in this period of time. It's like, and I hope that's inspiring for anyone listening to this, where you go, maybe I launched a book, it hasn't taken off yet. It's been a few months. It's been 6 months. It's been a year. It's been 3 years. Okay. You can keep going. Some of my books that I released years ago are picking back up. But it's like, as long as you just keep putting the word out. It's a brand new book. It's a brand new book to the people on your list who weren't on your list when you launched the book in the first place. It's something that you can just keep talking about. And here's one more mistake, and don't shoot the messenger. I'm hidden in my in-laws' house where there is no location available, right? So you can't shoot me. But the best way to market your book is to write another book, because when somebody likes you, they go, what else? What else has Derek written? Okay, so I read this book. What else has he got? And then they want to find what else you have, and they go looking for it. So the best way to market a book is actually to write another book. Yeah, and it's a great point, because once you've done the work of marketing someone to get them into your world, so much easier to sell an existing customer than to get new customers. Correct. And if you have just a minute or two, because you brought up the repurposing thing,
Yes.
you open that loop, and now
I
I'm sure
know,
some
I
people are
did.
curious.
I love it.
So if someone goes, you can create another book, but someone goes, let's say it's a course. This is a question I hear sometimes. Someone goes, "What I put everything in my book. What would I possibly create a course about, or what else? Why would I create anything else?"
Well, you can't put everything in a book. That's the first thing. Or the book is so thick that the movers are just using it to prop open the door so they can take your stuff, right? So that's like, so you don't have everything in your book. In You Must Write a Book, I put everything I could put in a book without having a conversation with someone. So it's 85 or 90% of what someone needs to write and publish and market a book and market with their book. It's all in there. Go read it. It's wonderful. However, I have a course that makes that book look stupid because it's 12 hours of me talking and sharing all of the things. And there's so much I couldn't put in the book because people don't want a book. If I give you a book that's this thick, so 3 or 4 inches, the first thing you say is thank you. And the second thing you do is think, I don't have time to read that. I'm going to read that someday. It's on your desk, then it's on the credenza behind you, and then it goes on the long-term bookshelf, and then someday you're like, oh, I'm going to give up. I'm never going to read this. You get rid of it, right? So don't put everything in your book, but you can't, and you didn't. And so now you can take that very same book and turn it into a course. The saddest words to me are, I've only sold 12 books, but everybody who's read the book loves the book. That says to me that the content is good. It just needs more marketing, but it also might need repurposing, because if you're talking about something that's complex, like writing a book, like starting a business, like doing something new that's overwhelming and has multiple steps, the person who reads it gets overwhelmed. What was the book that I read? Who's the guy? Ryan Levesque, right? He did Ask. I was super good for like the first 50% of the book. And then the second 50% of the book, I was like, oh, Ryan. Like, my brain hurts. My brain is hurting, right? And of course, that's what he wanted, is for your brain to hurt. So you go, here's my American Express card. Do all of these things for me, right? Exactly the same concept in theory, right? Not with an evil undertone, but you understand what I'm saying. So it's like you want someone to read your book and recognize you're the expert, and also recognize that if they're the right customer, you are the person that can help them.
Yeah, there's going to be certain people out there who want to do everything themselves. They're like, I just want to read the book. I want to try to figure all this out, whether it's the technology, whether it's the whatever it is. And they might not be the people who are going to get your course or coaching ever in the first place. Then there's a lot of people out there who are like, this is great. I want someone to do it with me, or I want someone to do it for me. And that's where you can also position yourself to go deeper. Or I want access to the author. I want access to the expert. I have some questions. Okay, well, people in my course get access to me.
Correct.
And that's another way for something. And I think about what I've invested in. I'm like, I'm investing in this just so I have some accountability. And I know if I invest in this course, there's things where I've gotten courses where I'm like, I probably could have gotten everything in this $1,500, $2,000 course in a book, but I'm glad I got the course because I actually showed up and paid attention and did every single exercise. And I guarantee I would not have done that if it was in a book form.
No, and also I want to make sure that everyone listening hears us, because we're on the same page, I'm sure, when it's don't leave stuff out of your book so that you can put it in a course. I put everything in my book I could put in a book without having a conversation with someone, without going into their particular situation. But when you said, is it marketing, is there marketing or is there market, right? What are the different things that you decide? It's like, it's not one size fits all. Every single person that I talk to, I'm always asking them, what do you want the reader to do? What do you want the reader to not do? What do you want the right reader to do? And let's go one step, let's go one more ring out. Where does this book fit into your business? How does this fit monetarily into your business? Because your book is an asset. It's not a business card. When you give someone a business card, you say, here, would you throw this away for me? When you give someone a book, there's the presupposition that they may want to engage you. But if someone can't afford the $1,000 course, the $5,000 course, the mastermind, the larger the 5-figure, 6-figure engagement, What they can't afford is that book. And what you want to provide in your book is everything they need that you can provide without having a conversation with them, knowing that there are going to be plenty of people that are going to be able to engage you. But you need to make sure that you close the loop and answer the questions as much as you possibly can. That's just good business and good karma.
Yeah, I love that. And it's another perk of writing a book I found as a coach is there's a lot of people who can't afford the coaching, they can't afford courses, and they have a lot of questions. And I want to answer the questions. I don't want to just ignore them, but would it be feasible? So it's nice when I can say, hey, here's a book, even a free, hey, actually I have a free book that I did on that. And talk about repurposing content.
Yeah.
Here's an interview I did on that. Here's a podcast you can check out. Here's something. So I'm not leaving them hanging without direction. I can help the people who maybe aren't ready for the next level services. When you have a book, you have a gift that you can provide people that is accessible for just about everyone.
That's right. That's right.
So thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. And I'm sure many people are going to go, I want to learn more from you. I want to see what you have to offer. So how can people find out more about you?
So honoreecorder.com is my website. I'm at Honoree on all social media. And like I said earlier, you can get a free copy of You Must Write a Book right on the front of my website. And there are tons of bonuses that come with the book. Lots of things that are helpful with writing a book, publishing a book, and marketing a book, and marketing with a book. So important. I love the conversation around marketing and making money with books. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because so many people come to me and that's what they want to know. So I love talking about it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And we'll get a link there too. And for the spelling, HONOREECORDER.com. Right?
.com. Yes.
All right. So for anyone listening, that's where it is. Highly recommend you go check that out, get the free resources, and contact Honoree if you want to get more assistance when it comes to your book, getting the word out there, marketing. She is a master, works with some of the top authors in the industry. And as you've heard here, she knows quite a bit that can help you when it comes to strategies. And we've only just scratched the surface. I know there's so much more that you could share. So on that note, thanks again. Any final words that you want to leave with the listeners?
Well, if you have a book and it's underperforming, there is hope. And if you don't have a book, you're going to love being an author. It is one of the best things that you can possibly do. So get on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.